we'll have to carry
I'm
on.
making it cut off.
Okay, so it's recording now. Let's fire away.
Okay then, so yeah, thank you again for bearing with us. Really crazy time. If I do get any more questions sent in any other ways, I will read them and say them as well. But the first one is then, so actually before we do that, could you just give me a little bit of background about yourself in regards to bereavement services so that people can understand how you can be in a position to answer the questions, please?
Okay, so I'm the Cabinet Member for Homes and Neighbourhoods, which is housing, homelessness, bereavement services, which is, in terms of bereavement services, I've got political leadership responsibilities over the crematorium, cemeteries, the mortuary, the coroner's court, the budgets around that. So I kind of have to do the high level policy decision making. I have devolved responsibilities that are given to me by the leader of the council in this area. So decisions like closing cemeteries and crematoriums and things like that, that's ultimately that I have responsibility over. And when the officers have devolved responsibilities, they have to sort of get sign off from me as well in some areas. So yeah, so pretty much that's what I do.
Wow, massive. Okay, so here we go then. Thank you for that. I'm going to just go off with the first question, so that obviously we're in a really unusual time at the moment with the coronavirus, and we know that it's had a massive impact on people's lives in general, but also in bereavement services in particular. The first question that I've got asked is, what are the official numbers allowed at funerals?
So in Birmingham, we've set the number for 6 around the graveside. What happens in the churches, I think the funeral directors are actually asked to, consider social distancing. But the decision was taken locally in line with the coronal area, which is Birmingham and Solihull, that we would have 6, because we felt that 6 was enough people around one grave to be able to observe 2 meters social distancing as well. So, but we will continuously review some of this stuff. So nothing is totally set in stone, but that's where we are at the moment, which I know is difficult for many families.
Yeah, particularly our African, Caribbean and Asian families who are typically used to having large numbers at funerals. So that's a massive change. It
is a huge change. And what I will say to people is that I think with coronavirus, we really need to get to a place where we start to accept that life is not going to be the way that it was for this period of time. And ultimately, for me, one of the priorities is to keep people safe, keep people well. And, I'd rather less funerals than actually having funerals with large attendance and risk people spreading the virus and illness and other things around. So it's a tough decision to have been made, but like I said, we are up for reviewing constantly, but that's where we are at the moment.
Cool, thank you. And the next question that we have is, what can a family do if they have no money or life insurance in this situation? Because I think for some people this is going to be like quite sudden, so they might not have any plans or anything in place. Have you got any suggestions or things that they can do in this situation?
This is something that I have been thinking about, and I've been speaking to colleagues about this as well, and the MPs. So I am aware that there is a fund for people who have who are on certain types of benefits. So you can actually, the next of kin can actually apply for this type of fund, and I will get you the link so you can add it when you post this out. So that's one thing, but I am under the understanding that some of that may have to be paid back at a later date if they are subsidised. At the moment, what I am doing is I've been speaking to the leader of the council and some of the MPs, because when it comes to bereavement services, I've been really in touch with the government, and we will be asking the government to consider whether they would be putting a package together for those that have been affected by coronavirus, because for some families it's 2 and 3 deaths in one family. It is a lot. The funerals are expensive.
Yeah, that is a lot. And it's like you say, if you've got several members of the family that need to be Buried or
Buried or
taken care of. Yeah, it's an expense. It's quite a big expense for them. Okay. Next question, and this was a question that had me thinking as well, actually. And it's a bit of a tough one, but it's, are people just going to get cremated now that there is a real increase in deaths? Will burials still happen, or will people just be cremated?
So the government, is going to be a bit of a long-winded answer, but the government actually, in essence, no. So we are going to do burials, and we are also going to do cremations for those that wanted it. The government were proposing a change in legislation that actually meant that the government and local authorities, if they ran out of space, they could actually determine whether you were buried or cremated based on resources. Myself and Shabana Mahmood, as the MP for Ladywood, we really went to task over this, and we lobbied the government. We had telephone calls with ministers and actually pushed back. And a lot of the things that we asked for Birmingham was put into the amendment of the legislation, so that's not going to be the case. But I've done the maths for Birmingham. I think it was about a year ago, Sutton New Hall Cemetery, we extended by about 12,000 graves, the extension was. So we're very, very confident, even with some of the predictions around COVID-19, that we have got enough burial space. And we're also very confident that we've also got enough resource to cremate people if they so wish to be cremated. So we will not be going down the route of forcing people, because we know that religiously, for a lot of groups, that's a bit of a no-no. So,
yeah, big no-no for some. Thank you for that. And it is a good question, because I know that's been playing, I think that's been circulating on social media a little bit as well, just about how it's all going to be done, because of the numbers, the sheer numbers that we're talking about. But yeah, thank you for answering. But they've mentioned that the airport and NEC are going to be used as a mortuary. So what does that practically mean for us?
So across the region, the West Midlands, all the different areas have been talking about how we're going to be affected by COVID-19. What that means for Birmingham is, if there's a new facility built for the region, if we need to use additional space for when it comes to mortuary services, which pretty much is fridges and you know, the freezers and stuff, we will tap into that resource. But at the moment, we're very confident that based on what's happening at the moment, we have got sufficient mortuary capacity across the city.
Okay, because it does seem like, if you watch the news and you listen to it all, it seems like, oh my gosh, we're preparing for crazy numbers when you say like an airport and an NEC will be used for those purposes. So I think it kind of does sort of scare people a little bit as to the sheer numbers of people that we're talking about.
It does. And you know, the numbers that were first suggested for the city was roughly around 8,000, and we don't expect those numbers now. But part of the reason why we are kind of preparing like this is because, if we're honest, some people have not adhered to the guidance of not coming out of your house unnecessarily, unnecessary travel, social distancing. And that's why, you know, if people stick to that, then the likelihood of the virus spreading more is going to reduce, and then we won't need to be looking at that kind of capacity. But this is just making sure that we're prepared for the worst case scenario, having looked at places like Italy.
Yeah, fine. Thank you for that. Another question that we've got is, can we visit cemeteries at the moment? There's a big question.
No.
Answer.
No. Cemeteries and crematoriums at the moment have been closed to the public. The reason why they've been closed to, the reason why we took that decision was because we were finding that since the announcements from the government around social distancing, we were having an increase of visitors to the cemeteries and crematoriums, and children coming along to cemeteries and crematoriums and not observing the social distancing. So we took the decision to close them. We only open them for funerals.
Wow, okay, thank you. Wow, that's a biggie, but I guess, yeah, you're right. Having them.
I know that even for myself, you know, I always visit my nan's grave on you know, Easter Sunday, and you know, if you've just buried someone, you want to go along to the graveside. But again, we've just had to take decisions based on what we were seeing happening, and it's unfortunate, and you know, it's not a nice decision to have to take, but again, it's about trying to keep people as safe as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So a kind of question following on from the, not the last one, the one before, what's the process now if someone passes away? Because I guess there are, in light of, even though we have COVID-19 going on, there are other people with other conditions, and you know, they might have cancer or other things happening that are nothing to do with this, and if they pass away, so what is the process now? Is it the same for everybody across the board, or how yeah, that's the question.
So we've pretty much changed the process because of COVID-19. Now you can register deaths online and over the phone, whereas before you used to have to go to the office to do that. Forms can be submitted online, so that makes it very different. And one of the things we did have to recognise was the fact that, you know, if someone's loved one had passed away, if your husband passes away of COVID-19, you're then forced into a situation where you need to be in isolation for 14 days as well. So when we've changed that process now, things are operating, or should be operating, quicker, so we can get things done in a more timely way. But we've been working with the funeral directors. So the funeral directors are working closely with the council, so they will be able to guide families as well. Excellent.
Thank you for that. Another question around funeral directors. I know that it's sort of it may not be something you can or can't answer, but could you give us an idea of the types of pressures that they might be under at the moment with the virus and the increase of people passing away?
In terms of, I think, funeral directors, anybody operating with the service, one of the things that they're going to be dealing with is, firstly, we have to remember that they're all human. So, you know, they too are going to have their staff members that might need to go into isolation, or, you know, they might have staff shortages. There's an increase in numbers of deaths at the moment, so capacity is going to be, you know, you have to bear with them. I think at a time at the moment, because when people pass away, I think it really tests us individually. And it is a time when people get more anxious, they want to know information, they might get upset with people. So I do say bear with them, because everyone is trying their best. And then also the difficulty is going to be around, some of it is going to be booking spaces and slots for funerals. Churches are saying that they themselves are saying that they're not going to have huge congregations, and it's also dealing with the disappointment of the amount of people that you can have coming through. There's a lot of coordination when it comes to when someone passes away. It depends on whether they pass away in a hospital, when the last time they saw a doctor, whether they need to have a post-mortem. There's so many different areas, and I think sometimes people only see the funeral director and that's all they deal with. And I just ask people to be understanding of the fact there's going to be things that are out of their control. So if there is delays, it could be because of a release from a hospital or the mortuary. You know, we've only got a certain number of technicians in the mortuary, so there's going to be time delays sometimes. But ultimately, I think the biggest pressure is going to be around them with staffing, supporting people, because they are stepping into a pastoral role.
Yeah. Yeah,
does that actually answer the question, Sab?
That does actually answer the question perfectly, because it is about understanding the overall, the context of it all, and the gravity that this is having on the different services as well. Obviously, you know, we know there's many funeral directors out there, and especially in our community, we go to the certain ones that we use. And obviously they'll be under a certain amount of pressure now, because there'll be so many people that require their services. So it's kind of just giving that overview to people to let them understand that, you know, there may be a delay, there's lots of people, there's lots of other things that they have to do, and it's not a normal or ordinary circumstance to try and navigate through. So you answered it perfectly, Sharon, thank you. Question, can elderly relatives attend funerals as well?
So I would say this is down to discretion. So it's not for me to tell you who your 6 love members or mourners can be at a funeral. But I would also say, be mindful of those that fall into the category of being high risk when it comes to COVID-19. So if it was my family members, I wouldn't be encouraging, for instance, my dad to go along because he's got underlying health conditions, he's elderly, social distancing and everything else. It wouldn't be wise for me to take that decision for him to be there. So I would say to people, use your discretion. Think about whether people have got underlying health issues, whether it's children and how they're going to be managed, and also the fact of people's age as well.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. We've got 2 more questions and that will be it, I think. So will you be, a similar question, I'll ask it anyway. Will Birmingham be revising the numbers for funerals to be on par with other local authorities who've cited 10? Given the size of immediate families in such a culturally diverse city, such a small number seems very unfair, especially when people won't be given the fact to say goodbye. So will we be revising the number?
We will be reviewing it. We will continue to look at it. I just think that, one, we did speak to faith leaders, we did speak to some funeral directors around the numbers. We spoke to staff because staff have to manage these things on site, so we did do all of that. And it's also about looking at the history as well. So in some particular sites, they're small, the actual grounds are small, the actual grave isn't different, but the size of the actual cemetery is. And then also you have to take into consideration the history. So for some cemeteries, we've had to have security there when it comes to funerals and large funerals and managing people's expectations and things like that. And even when we set the number at 6, you know, we've had instances already where I've heard of 80 and 100 people turning up on a 6. So basically what I'm saying is if the public can just work with us as much as possible, you know, when 100 people turn up, it makes it a bit difficult for me to kind of think, well, if we increase it, how are staff going to manage it? So I have to think about staff welfare and all of that. But I do totally understand when it comes to large families, and we would definitely be reviewing it.
Okay, thank you for that. Last question, and then I've got a suggestion that someone made. Have Birmingham prepared themselves for the increase in the need for mental health referrals after COVID-19? Bereavement counselling for adults and children, and maybe PTSD counselling for frontline workers. Those are just 2 examples.
So we always work across directorates, and Councillor Paulette Hamilton, she is my equivalent when it comes to adult social care and incredibly passionate when it comes to mental health. This is something that we will be having conversations about. What I will say is, in some areas of the portfolio, I am already having conversations of what happens post-COVID-19, because I'm very aware that on some things, the government have been very generous with funding, and they have been very more willing to be more flexible with national policies that has affected the way we've operated in the past. So in this current period of time, if we're asking them for money, they're very generous. But after COVID-19, my concern is that the tap then turns off. And a lot of these services that deliver mental health services, bereavement counselling, they've also suffered with 10 years worth of austerity without me being over political. So they've also, you know, suffered with cuts. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is I'm writing to the government with the leader of the council and some MPs, lobbying on the other areas that I talked about earlier, but we will also be asking them, will they be able to invest in bereavement counselling services for both statutory and the voluntary sector, so that we can prepare post COVID-19, because the situation with people at the moment is not being able to attend funerals the way that you would. You can't hold a 9's night because of social distancing. All of those things have been eroded, and all of those things are things that we're used to. They're a part of our grieving process. So I totally agree with what the person said in the question. Yes, we will be looking at it, but in all honesty, we cannot do it by ourselves without the government supporting that financially.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. Brilliant. Last, not really a question, more of a suggestion. I had a suggestion given to me around filming and recording or doing live recordings at the graveside to help people who can't attend to feel a part of that process. Is that something that you would recommend, or do you have any suggestions for sharing the service or anything moving forward?
So those that are having crematoria and cremations, we are already looking at that because it's within our chapels. So we're already providing that service to those that want it as part of the financial package around funerals. We're doing that anyway. We're trying to consider, how do you do it when it comes to a graveside? We do know that there are people that are Facebook live streaming, Zoom, recording from the graveside and the funerals. No objections to that, because we have to be able to grieve in different ways. But what I am going to be asking people to do is, please make sure you check with the people that are around you that they have no objections to being captured within filming. And can you, if you're intending on recording a funeral at any point, please make sure that you pre-arrange that with the funeral director.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that takes us to the end of our questions. Hope you don't feel like you've been in the hot seat for too long.
No, it was fine. It was okay. And thank you to everybody that sent in questions. Every single one was an important question. We will continue the dialogue. I will continue to work with Sabrina and Nathan and the whole of that movement around bereavement services, homelessness and everything else in my portfolio. And the council is committed to that as well, because we want to make sure that we're talking to people as much as possible and getting real answers to proper questions that people are having while they're sat inside their homes. We have to make sure correct information is out there. But please follow the guidelines on COVID-19, because as much as I enjoy all of my portfolio, including bereavement services, I don't want to see too many people in there at this precise moment in time because of COVID-19. So thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Thanks to everybody for sending in their questions. And if there's any more questions, I will definitely get them over to you, Sharon, and we can answer them later on. If you've got any information, Sharon, that we can circulate, please send it over to me, and then I'll drop the links in the relevant places for people to access them. But thanks very much, and I really appreciate you. And stay safe.
Thank you for having me at your table. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.